here's what I want to do. I want to have an object that contains everything about my spell. So instead of having two separate variables, spell name and level, I want one variable called spell. That's an object with a name of f.spellName.value and a level of f.level.value. And I'm going to leave my trailing comma because I always do. So then if I do that, here I would put like spell.name, right? Get it? So this is all going to break. But here's what I'm trying to do. I want to make the function now that makes the entire li. And it seems like I'm not going to create the spans inside handle submit anymore. I'm going to create the spans from within this new function that creates the li. So I have render property here. How about I make one called render item, as in list item. So it's going to do basically this stuff. Don't forget to return the item at the end. But it also needs to create these darn things. So I want to just be able to say const item equals render item. And it seems like all it really needs to know is about this spell. If it knows everything about the spell, that should be enough. Now, I'm just doing the same thing over and over here. Right? I'm calling render property twice. I'm appending child twice. Once for each property that spell happens to have. From your mirror object problem on Code Wars, did anybody figure out how to get an array of all of the keys or all of the properties of an object? For in, you can do that. What's that? Key set. I don't know that one. What's the syntax for that? Dot key set? That a thing? Yeah, I guess not. Well, if there were, it would have at least said that. Yeah. So that's not how we do it. Anybody do this? I heard dot keys in there, so that's close. In some languages, that's how you do it. Object dot keys. So let's object dot keys and pass it some object. So that will give me an array with just the keys. So like object.keys spell, I'm expecting to give me the array name and level. I could just type name and level, but I'm only putting these comments in here to make the point of how this works. So I could have a variable called properties or something. So then for each property, I can call render property. You see the direction I'm going here? Right now there's only two, so this seems like a lot of work for little reward. But if our form got more complicated, doing it this way would keep us from ever having to really rewrite this thing. So instead of calling render property twice, I could just call it once for everything that's in the array. See what I'm getting at? So properties is an array I could call forEach, pass it a function that takes a single property as an argument. And then I could call render property, pass it in the name, so that's either going to be name or level. And then the value, what's the value going to be? So suppose prop, So suppose the prop is level. How do I get the value out of there? Spell here, remember, is this object right here. Huh? So I could say like spell dot level, right? Except I don't know that it's level. I'm doing this once for everything in the array, right? So what do I have to do instead? I can't do dot prop, or it'll actually look one with the name, quote, the string prop. But I could do square brackets prop. So my array object.keys spell, and spell, remember, is this. Object.keys on this will give me the array with the string spell and the string level. So once I have that, I can loop over it using forEach. So it'll call this inner function once, and prop will be name. So I will call render property with the string name and spell dot name, basically, or spell square bracket name, right? Because that's what prop is. Then it'll call the function again, but this time prop will be level. So it will call render property passing in the string level and spell square bracket level. Get it? Get what's happening? So that's going to return a couple of spans, which will now be in the ether, doing us no good. But what if we used map instead of forEach? Because map collects the return values and makes a new array. See what I mean? So the first time I call render property, I'm going to get a span back, right? Next time I call render property, I'm going to get a span back. And the way map works is it'll collect all of those return values and put them in a new array. So now I have an array. Collect an array of span elements. So that's what I'm doing here. So I don't need this anymore. And then I just want to add each one of them to the item. So I'll create the list item. I'll add the spell class to it. Then I'll append each span to the li. And how will I do that? How about forEach? Sure. So child elements is now my array of spans. I'll pass it a function. My inner function here, my callback function, will receive each span. I'll just call it element as an argument. So I could just say item.append child that element and return my item. So that's kind of complicated. Do I have it in a working state right now? Yeah, seems to work. Although I no longer have my underline there. Why not? Now it's got a class of name, not spell name. My CSS looked for spell name. Name is kind of a generic class, so I could be more specific. I could say anything with a class of name that is inside something with a class of spell, just to make sure if I use that class anywhere else on the page, I'm not going to have a problem. Plus, it kind of reads nicely there. Okay, the spell name. Text decoration, underline, etc. Try that again. So this function's kind of a lot, but we're using some new tricks. Object.keys, we're using array map, we're using forEach, extract render item function using map and forEach. You can practice with those things if you want. Read some documentation, etc. Get some practice. Get familiar with them. Handle submit's a lot simpler now. Questions?